MTC 2-1, Unit 7. 1-2 Exercise 1. Did any travelers complete the arduous journey from the Indus Valley to Mesopotamia, or vice versa, in the 3rd millennium BCE? 3. Whether traveling overland or by sea, the trip would have been well over 1,000 miles. There is no evidence from the Indus Valley excavations that suggests the presence of Mesopotamians. Of course, ongoing research in the Indus region could establish otherwise. However, there are hints from the digs at Ur, a major Sumerian city-state on the Euphrates, that some Indus Valley merchants and artisans, bead makers, may have established communities in Mesopotamia. Ur. One leading researcher at the Indus Valley sites also has put forth the view that the 10 attendants buried at Ur with Queen Pubi around 2500 BCE were women from the Indus Valley, perhaps sent to Pubi as part of a diplomatic agreement. 2500 Pubi Ur 10 Pubi. DNA analysis of the remains of the attendants, who were buried wearing Indus-style carnelian beads, could confirm this view. DNA. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2-1, Unit 7. 1-2 Exercise 2. Like buildings, some vehicles are designed from the inside out, while others are conceived with a predetermined form into which people and activities must fit. Many modern cars are shaped around the ergonomics of the passenger cell. Alternatively, if office buildings are often shaped like cereal packages, certain types of vehicles are either boxes or tubes, whose forms are conditioned by factors other than the needs of their potential occupants. Such factors include economics, construction technology, laws of physics, or a particular infrastructure street layout in the case of architecture, road or rail networks in relation to vehicles. Nevertheless, although they are similar in shape, the difference between the interior of a boxcar and a Pullman dining car is fundamental, just as a house and a warehouse are different species. Pullman. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2-1, Unit 7. 1-2 Exercise 3. Everyone talks about the innovation economy, but no one knows exactly where it begins. If innovation means new businesses and new ways of working that depend on digital technology, we can trace its origins to mid-20th century centers of research in electronics production like California's Silicon Valley and Route 128 in Boston. 12820. But if we want to know about the current era of platform capitalism, we look for innovation in new centers of software development in every big city of the world, beginning with San Francisco, New York, London, and Shanghai. Moral judgments also shape our search. Although critics of the new economy are outraged by precarious labor and digital surveillance, people who work within the self-styled tech community prefer an aspirational discourse of innovation and entrepreneurship. Yet one thing is sure despite contrasting views. Cities today are crucial sites for both the creation of and resistance to a powerful interplay of land, labor, culture, and capital that forms the base of the new economy, the innovation complex. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2-1, Unit 7. 1-2 Exercise 4. The potential for recycling to contribute to sustainable communities has been questioned. Critics point out that the prevailing recycling model is dependent on a market for recyclable materials. In order to be profitable, new products must be manufactured using the recycled material and consumed. This process takes emphasis off the need to reduce consumption, the increase in which is a major factor in the waste increase in the first place. Even with increases in recycling rates, without reductions in consumption, the amount of waste sent to landfills and incinerators and the amount of raw materials consumed will continue to increase. The existence of recycling programs is sometimes represented as a defense against the need to reduce consumption. For example, the bottled water industry, which has been criticized on multiple environmental grounds, notes that it encourages the recycling of plastic bottles. The majority of recycled plastic beverage bottles, however, are manufactured into other products, and new plastic bottles are made from virgin materials. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2.1, Unit 7. 1.2 Exercise 5.6. Credit Sigmund Freud with helping start a popular misconception that continues to this day. Sigmund Freud. His ideas about the importance of emotional catharsis became part of what psychologists now call the hydraulic model of anger. In essence, this model holds that frustration leads to anger, and that anger then builds up until it is released in some way. The implication is that if someone is angry, he needs to vent his anger verbally or physically, or he may explode. Fritz Perls, the prominent psychiatrist, argued that if a person bottles up his rage, we have to find an outlet. We have to give him an opportunity for letting off steam. Fritz Perls. This idea has penetrated popular culture for many years. Youngsters should be taught to vent their anger, wrote famed advice columnist Ann Landers in a column some years ago. Ann Landers. And pop self-help books advise people to punch pillows or punching bags or to hit couches with plastic bats to get rid of their bottled-up anger. But this kind of venting, says Brad Bushman, Ph.D., an associate professor of psychology at Iowa State University, is like using gasoline to put out a fire. It only makes matters worse. Iowa Brad Bushman. The reason, he says, is that venting anger keeps people aroused, increasing the chance that they will say or do something that may be harmful or violent. In a series of fascinating experiments, Bushman angered students by showing them negative comments. For example, "This is one of the worst essays I have ever read," about something they had written. Bushman. He then gave them the chance to wail on a punching bag and then to zap an opponent with a loud, offensive noise. He found that the more the students had liked punching the bag, the more aggressive they were in sound blasting their opponents. The point, says Bushman, is that when people express their anger physically by yelling, slamming doors, or hitting things, or people, it keeps their anger alive and allows them to rehearse being angry. Bushman. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2.1, Unit 7. 1.2 Exercise 7. The proportions of the demographic classes affect the fitness of the group and, ultimately, of each individual member. A group comprised wholly of infants or aging males will perish obviously. Another, less deviant, group has a higher fitness that can be defined as a higher probability of survival, which can be translated as a longer waiting time to extinction. Either measure has meaning only over periods of time on the order of a generation in length, because a deviant population allowed to reproduce for one to several generations will go far to restore the age distribution of populations normal for the species. Unless the species is highly opportunistic, that is, unless it follows a strategy of colonizing empty habitats and holding on to them only for a relatively short time, the age distribution will tend to approach a steady state. In species with seasonal natality and mortality, which is to say nearly all animal species, the age distribution will undergo annual fluctuation. But even then the age distribution can be said to approach stability, in the sense that the fluctuation is periodic and predictable when corrected for season. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2.1, Unit 7. 1.2 Exercise 8. Communications is the most valuable skill the human race has, and technology has evolved to either extend it or enhance it. In any event, technology is classified as successful when it improves communications. Knowledge alone is not enough to improve the human condition. Communications must accompany knowledge, or no improvements can occur. Being able to teach what has been learned is what makes knowledge valuable. If knowledge could not be communicated, then it would die with its discoverer and would need to be rediscovered each time a human being went down that same knowledge path. If it were not for synthetic speech and technology, the knowledge and thoughts of the genius Stephen Hawking could not be shared with the rest of the planet. Stephen Hawking. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2.1, Unit 7. 1.2 Exercise 9. After it has been collected, the argan fruit is then air-dried for a few days before it is ready to be peeled. The peel is latex-rich and, once dried, the brown wrinkled peel still sticks to the argan nut. Women use stones to weaken the peel, then remove it manually to get to the argan nut, which is the size of a large olive. Argan peel is frequently given to cattle. Goats are also very fond of argan fruit, and when grass is scarce they do not hesitate to climb into the trees to eat the fruit. Later, they regurgitate the peeled argan nuts, either underneath another tree or in their stables. Because argan fruit peeling is a long and tedious task, fruit collectors are sometimes tempted to collect the regurgitated fruit which has already been peeled. Not only does this practice raise microbiological concerns, but it also modifies the flavor of the oil. Argan oil prepared, wholly or in part, from regurgitated fruit is of low quality, and is frequently sold to tourists along the roads in plastic bottles. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2.1, Unit 7. 1.2 Exercise 10. Heat and cold tolerance are greatest in individuals who grow up in the conditions of high heat or considerable cold, while persons who move to such conditions can acclimate after a few days without achieving the full tolerance capacity of the natives. There has been some natural selection for tolerance of cold in the Arctic and in places like the central desert of Australia, where nights are close to freezing although days are warm. Central Desert. Inuit in the Arctic have the best blood flow to hands and feet of any population tested, a capacity that keeps the hands and feet warm, protecting against frostbite. Central Desert Australian Aborigines are accustomed to sleeping near a fire in a light shelter, a custom that allows their skin on the side away from the fire to cool to a degree that sets foreigners to shivering. Central Desert. Whether these Australians' ability to sleep without feeling discomfort is due to natural selection for tolerance, to habit since early childhood, or to a combination of genotype and habit has not yet been determined. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC 2.1, Unit 7. 1.2 Exercise 11-12. One way to cope with the inherent uncertainty about an innovation's consequences is to try out the new idea on a partial basis. Most individuals will not adopt an innovation without trying it first on a probationary basis in order to determine its usefulness in their own situation. This small-scale trial is often an important part of the decision to adopt. In some cases, an innovation cannot be divided for trial and so it must be adopted or rejected completely. Innovations that can be divided for trial are generally adopted more rapidly. Most individuals who try an innovation then move to an adoption decision, if the innovation has at least a certain degree of relative advantage. Methods to facilitate the trial of innovations, such as the distribution to clients of free samples of a new idea, usually will speed up the rate of adoption. For example, seed corn salesmen in Iowa in the 1930s gave a small bag of the new seed to Iowa farmers entering the decision stage. 1930 Iowa, Iowa. The free seed was enough to plant about an acre of corn, a large enough trial to convince a farmer to adopt the new idea on all of his corn acreage in the next few years. 1. The trial of a new idea by a peer can substitute, at least in part, for the individual's trial of an innovation, at least for some individuals and for some innovations. This trial by others provides a kind of vicarious trial for an individual. Change agents often seek to speed up the innovation decision process for individuals by sponsoring demonstrations of a new idea in a social system. A demonstration can be quite effective in speeding up the diffusion process, especially if the demonstrator is an opinion leader. MTC. Good job.